Okay, I'll give you the Hakdama, and I'll tell you where the problems will arise. Let's see. Okay, so now here's what the problems are. We're dealing with the case of Eishes Achiv Shloi Haya Balamo. We're dealing with a case you have two brothers, one dies, and his Yevamot, Reuven, Shimon, Velevi. Reuven's Yevamot now is falling to Shimon. Before Shimon gets it, now it could be two possibilities. Either Shimon does Yibim or he doesn't do Yibim and Levi's born. Clearly, the key is Levi was not in the world the same time Reuven was. Levi was not in the world the same time Reuven was. We know from the previous Perek that Rav Shimon argues. The question is, where does Rav Shimon argue? Does he argue in both cases, or does he agree in one and disagree in the other? Now, which would the case would he agree in? That would be in the case where Reuven dies and then Levi is born, because now all you have is the Zika possibly from Reuven, because after all, they weren't in the world at the same time. However, if Shimon would go ahead and be Miyabim Har, and now Levi is born, when Levi comes in the world, where's Reuven? Reuven's wife is married to Shimon. So in fact, there is a shita of Rabbi Oishia who holds Reb Shimon argues in both cases, not only in the latter case where you found he was born and found her married to Shimon, even where he was born and she wasn't married to Shimon. The question is, what's the mechanics of that working out? Okay, this is the key. Guys, listen to this. So here's the case. Reuven dies, Levi is born, Shimon is miyabem Reuven's almana, Shimon dies, right? And then Shimon dies, says Reb Shimon, Levi can marry either one. Levi can be Yabim either one, because neither one is Eishes Achiv Shloi Haya Balamo. Neither one. In other words, he has a choice. Whichever one he would take off, that would pater him. Now, what's the mechanics of that? Clearly, Shimon wasn't married yet. Says the Gemara, Zika Kikenusa. In other words, we'll view Reuven's widow married to Shimon, despite the fact that Shimon didn't marry her yet. But the Zika is kol kach stark. The Zika is so strong, we'll view her as Shimon's wife. And Rabbi Shimon will view it as if Shimon was married to Reuven's wife. Either was never married. The Zika created a marriage. Thus, that's not a case of Eishes Achiv Shloi Balamo. So let Reb Shimon, where would you have a case of Eishes Achiv Shloi Balamo? After all, we know it says Yeshru Achim Yachtav. Brothers have to be in the world at the same time. Apparently, that there is such an animal that exists, and the answer is Pashit. One brother. You have a brother Reuven. Reuven dies, leaves over a woman. He has no brothers yet, and Shimon's born. That case, Rabbi Shimon would be Maida that Shimon, that Reuven's widow can't be married to Shimon. Or what the other case would be, if Shimon doesn't die, or Shimon doesn't do Yibum. In that case, Levi will be us on Reuven's wife, as Eishes Achiv Shloi Balamo. That's it. Okay, so that's the difficulty in the daf is questioning the Zika Kiknusa. So again, let's just give the framework of it and where the problems lie. The framework is Reb Shimon argues with the Chachamim in both cases. Not only in the case where Reuven's widow is married to Shimon when Levi is born, but even when Levi is born before Shimon marries her. He argues in that case also. And the dynamics of that case, the way it works, is Zika Kiknusa. And we're going to then get into the give and take of how that works. We will then see Rav Papa. Rav Papa holds that Rav Shimon only argues in the case where Levi is born and she's married. He would be Moida in the case where Levi is born before Shimon marries her, that it's Eishes Achiv Shloi Balamo. So, and we're going to hold like that. We're going to slug up the first case. We're going to slug up Rabbi Shia, and we're going to agree, and we're going to have a riot to Rav Papa. So that's the format of the daf. So let's begin. I wish you all atzlacha, and hopefully I know a little bit to help get you through this. Okay? Says the Gemara. Says the Mishnah. We're up to the Mishnah. Yud Ches Amid Beis. Shnei achim umeis echem mehem. You got two brothers, Reuben and Shimon, and Reuben dies. V'yibim ha'sheni yaseish achiv, and Shimon does yibum. V'ach kach noilad hem ach, and then another ach is born. Now, this is different than the first Mishnah. In our first Mishnah, Levi was born before Shimon did yibum. Again, we have two cases. The first Mishnah, Levi was born before Shimon did yibum. This case, Levi is born after Shimon does yibum. Umeis, and now Shimon dies. Harishayna, the meaning Reuven's widow who'd been married to Shimon, Yoitze Mishemes Zach Shlahel Balamo, V'hashniya Mishum Tzarasa. And this is the first Mishnah. It's the 15th case of what? Of one of the Tesvav that one of the 15 that pat is. This is the case. In other words, that whoever holds this holds both cases. Not only when Levi wasn't married, but even when Shimon was married, then we pat the Levi. Says the Gemara, a new din, Asaba Maimer. Let's say Shimon did not marry her, only gave her the kesef kedushin called Maimer. Asaba Maimer. So now, do we view her as married to Shimon or not? If we view her as married to Shimon, we'll patas Shimon's other wife. If we don't view her married to Shimon, then what? Then what's the din with the other wife? So hashniya chaletzes le'visya bemes. The sheni, the second wife, Shimon now has two wives, Reuven's wife and his other wife. That other wife does not get off the hook of tsaras erva because Maimer does not create a full marriage. Maimer can't make Shimon married to an Eishes Achash Lo Bamo and a tsaras erva. She's not a tsaras erva because she's not a full-fledged Eishes Achash Lo Bamo. Okay, until now we haven't discussed Rav Shimon at all. That's the Chachamim. So the Chachamim clear-cut shita, guys. Whether Shimon is married to her or whether Shimon's not married to her when Levi's born, the Reuven's widow is Asaf Esis Achshalamo. What about Shimon's Sarah? If she's Esis Achshalamo, the pot is the Tzara. It's Tzara Serva. She's free. What happens if she is not a complete Sarah? Why? Because Shimon only did Maimer. Then Levi would have to go ahead and give Chalitza to Shimon's wife because Shimon's wife was in the world when Levi was born, married to Shimon. Good. Now, here's Rav Shimon's argument. Rav Shimon, I should use a different word. Now, here's Rav Shimon coming to argue. Says the Gemara. Rav Shimon says, guess what? In the case where you find marriage, you're married, this is the classic case of Yibum, of two women falling to a brother who's mutter. There's no erva here. Why? Because when Levi was born, Reuven's widow was married to Shimon. So now it's two regular women falling to a brother, no problem. So Reb Shimon, do chalitza to anyone. Okay, so now Reb Shimon argues in this case. Question, does Reb Shimon argue in the first Mishnah as well? Now in the first Mishnah, he didn't say anything. Guys, go back to Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Go back to Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Ketzad Eishes Achim Shlehoya Balamo, Shnei Achim Umeisechem Mehem. Reuven dies. V'noiled lehem Ach, and then Levi's born. V'achaki Mesheni, and then Shimon does Yibum. You see the difference in the case, right? He's born before the Yibum, and if Shimon doesn't argue, back by us now. Go back by us. Question: does Rav Shimon argue there as well? And Rabbi is going to say yes, he does. He argues there as well. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Rama Rebbe Oishia. Guys, there is the Amoraim of Bavel did not have smicha. They were called Rav. The Amoraim of Eretz Yisrael did have smicha. They're called the Rebbe. They're called Rebbe. Or if you're a Tana, you're called Rebbe. Good. So now it says Rav Oishia over here. You have to be Garis Rebbe Oishia over here, because later on the Gemara, Rav Oishia is going to ask on this. So how can he be asking on himself? So obviously it's two different people. So they changed the gears over here. Amma Rebbe Oishia. Cholakay Reb Shimon after Rishayna. Reb Shimon even argues in the first case. He even argues that when Levi is born and Shimon did not marry her. Mimai. How do you know that? Midiktani Mishnah Yisera, when we learned in the extra Mishnah. But Baba Deresha, Laman Katani Lo, who learned the first Mishnah? Who learned the Mishnah when Levi was born before Shimon's Yibum? What are you talking about? Guys, once you tell me the second Mishnah, right? The first Mishnah is a moot point. If Levi is born after Shimon does Yibum, Kal V'chaymer, what? If Levi is born before Shimon does Yibum, it's going to be Eishes Achar Shlayel Valmo. Okay? Where Shimon did Yibum and then Levi was born. When Levi finds the wife of Ruvain, because she's married to Shimon, nonetheless, Aser Rabbanon, the Rabbanon say it's Ruvain's widow, is Aser of the Eshesach Shlahel Avamo. Noilad, if first Levi is born, the Achkach Yibim, and afterwards Shimon, so when he's born, Ruvain's widow was Eshesach Shlahel Avamo, she wasn't under the jurisdiction of any Heta. Mi boy, why are you telling me that? Elalav, it must be, who did you say this according to? Reb Shimon. You learned the first Mishnah, for Reb Shimon it's Tzrich. You learned the first Mishnah to tell me the Koyach of Reb Shimon, that even when Shimon did not do Yibum, Levi's mutter, Ruvain's widow, the Tana Seifa, and you learned the Seifa, that even when Levi was found Ruvain's widow married, it's still usher. Now, why didn't Rav Shimon argue in the Reisha, in the Mishnah Daf Yitzayin? Elanatul Rabbanon. They waited. They waited. Rav Shimon waited till Rabbanon finished talking, and they had the two cases. And then they argued. So very geschmack, says Rabbi Oishia. Rav Shimon argues across the board. Question, obviously. So where does Rav Shimon have the case of Eishes Ach Shleigel Mo? Eishes Ach Shleigel Mo Rav Shimon Hechim Mishkachasla. Says the Gemara. Either Bechad Acha, one brother. Ruvain dies. There is no brother then, and then Shimon's born. Or Umeis V'Noilad Leach Inami betray two brothers, Ruvain and Shimon. V'Layibein V'Leimeis. Shimon does neither. He neither dies nor does Yibum. So therefore, Ruvain's widow would be Asar on Levi. Okay, so very good. Now we're going to go to the Svaris of Reb Shimon. Why does Reb Shimon hold what he does? Now, Bishlema Yavim V'Akach Noilad. Bishlema, when Shimon went ahead, did Yibum to Ruvain's widow, and Levi is born. Ki Ashkachei, when Levi found the Ruvain's widow, Behetera Ashkacha, because she was a full-fledged wife to Shimon, and therefore I can understand why he argues. Ela Noilad V'Akach Yibim. But when Levi's born, before the Yibum of Shimon, my timer, what's the Svara? So what's the Svara? I told you. Listen to this lumdus, guys. Kisavar yesh zika, right? Now, guys, remember, ein zika yesh zika. We say everyone holds a zika. The question is how powerful the zika is. This zika he holds so powerful. Kiknusa damya will view Eshes Ruvain's widow, as a full-fledged wife to Shimon. Memela will view her as married to Shimon, and when Levi goes ahead and comes in the world, and she's Shimon's wife, and as we said, the Zika would go ahead and create her as a full-fledged wife. It's unbelievable finish. Now the Gemara gets hard. This Gemara now is trying to figure out Zika Kiknusa. Where do you get that from? Okay, the Gemara is trying to figure out where you get that from. Guys, any questions? The guys are clear so far. You guys are clear so far. Again. Hopefully. Now, Maskiv la Reb Yosef, Kazalong Reb Yosef, Hashta Zika Umaimer Mesafkale Reb Shimon, Ikiknusidamya of Ilakiknusidamya, Zika Lechudemi boy, Zika itself, you're asking. Pirish. We're going to see a case right now where Reb Shimon is Mesupik, whether Zika and a Maimer create Kiknusa. You tell me Zika alone could create Kiknusa? Madach first base and second base he masupik. Certainly he masupik in first base, right? Like what's going on over here? Okay, let's see the case. Let's see the case. We got three brothers married to three nachriyos. Where is this case? Three brothers married to three nachriyos. Okay. page 86. Page 86. Three brothers married three, not women who are unconnected. They're unconnected. None of them are what? None of them are sisters. Okay, so Reuven's married to Chana, Shimon's married to Penina, and Rus is married to Levi. Okay, Reuven dies. Labrias. Reuven dies, and now Shimon gives Maimer to Chana. Reuven dies, Shimon gives Maimer to Chana, and Shimon consequently dies. So falling in front of Levi are two women, Reuven's widow and Shimon's widow. Now, question is, was Shimon ever married to Chana that Levi can't do anything to her? Or can he do Penina or Chana? So just like Chana, Chana, you do chalitza, you can't do yibum, because we don't know if she was fully married to Shimon. So therefore you do chalitza to Chana. So too, you do chalitza to what? To Penina. Now why? Because you have two women possibly. Penina, you're probably coming from two women. Two men, Reuven and Shimon. You don't know. You have two zikas over here. You have the zika wasn't removed because you never did what? You never did a yibum. So therefore, both Penina and Chana, you have the two zikas over here. So just like Chana is the zika of two men, so that would pata the tzara from what? From Shimon from doing yibum. However, if Shimon says, you know what? You do whichever one you want. You do chalitza, you do yibum to one and chalitza to the other. Again, like Rav Shimon, guys, I can marry either Chana or Penina. I can marry Chana or Penina, and whichever one I don't marry, I do chalitza to. Why? Let's go through the tzadim. If you hold Shimon's maimer, guys, look at me. If you hold Shimon's maimer, creates kiknusa, creates a that what? That she is a full-fledged Yevamot, then it's a regular case of Yibum, right? Levi does Yibum to Chana because she's a full Yevamot, because Maim is Kaina, and that would go ahead and let Penina off the hook. Good. If it's not a full-fledged, she can marry Chana because it's Reuven's. Either way, he can marry her. He can either marry her because she's Shimon's widow, or he can marry her because she's Reuven's widow. If Maim is not Kaina, she's Reuven's widow. If Maim is Kaina, she's Shimon's widow, right? So therefore, good. Now the question is, why do you have to give chalitza to Penina? Okay, that's what we're going to work on, guys. Good. So you got the case. Okay, you got the case. You got the case. The case is we have a case clearly. We're a regular case of Yibum. Now, question of it now. You want to know, can Chana and Penina, what's the din? Says the Chachamim, you give chalitza to both. Says Rosh Shimon, you do Yibum to one and chalitza to the other. And the shaila is, why do you have to do chalitza like Rav Shimon? So, and all we want to prove, guys, that like Rav Shimon, there's a suffix whether Maimer and Zika. So how can you say Zika kiknusa? Says the Gemara inside. Maskala Rabbi Yosef. Hashta Zika u'Maimer misafkale, where you have both Zika and a Maimer, Rav Shimon, Iki knusa damya, lavka knusa damya. Zika lechudami boy, Zika alone, you have a question about? That what? That Zika is kiknusa? Not a question. You're saying it is a vadai? Maihi. Where do you see the case where you have a Maimer and a Zika, two, that Rav Shimon is in doubt? Shloisha achin nesun shloish nashim. Reuven, Shimon, Levi are married to three strangers. Nachriyais. And Reuven dies. Sheni Maimer, and Shimon gives what? Kesef Kedushim, what we call Maimer, to the widow of Reuven. Umeis, and consequently, Shimon dies. You give chalitza across the board. Why? Because you worry that you get two zikas from one woman. Shneimar umeis echad mehem yevama yava eleha mishaleh zika yavam echad v'leishaleh zika shnei yavamim. In other words, the Chachamim say, I can't go ahead and do Yibum to Reuven's widow. I can't do it to Penina, Shimon's widow, because they both have Zikas from both. They have Zika from Reuven and Zika from Shimon. Can't do it. So what do you do? Now, Reb Shimon does not hold of that. Reb Shimon, I don't hold it as two Zikas thing. I only hold of one thing. Reb Shimon, you go ahead and do Yibam to whichever one, either Chana or Penina, and the Yachles L'Shniya, and give the other one that you don't do Yibam to, do Chalitza. Now the Gemara goes through the logic over here. The Gemara goes through the logic. Watch. Yevumi Travayu Loi, to do Yibam to Chana al Reuven's widow, and to Shimon and to Pina al Shimon's widow. Loi, why? The Dilma Yesika, maybe the Zika is strong. If Zika is so strong, then Chana and Penina are both married to Shimon, so you only can do one, you can't do both. I can't do Yibam to both. Why? Because doing Yibam to both would insinuate that they're two separate houses, Reuven's house and Shimon's house. If Zika is strong enough, they're only Shimon's house. So therefore I can't do that. So what would the other option be? Yivu mechada, to go ahead what? And do Yibam to one. Let's say to Chana for iftar idach, and say that what? That Penina is off the hook. Now that would only work, guys, if what? If it's a total wife. It would only work is what? If Chana is a total wife, right? Loi, the Dilma ain't Zika kiknusa. Maybe Zika is not enough to go ahead. And you have two Yevamas coming from two separate houses, and I have to do Yibam to both. Alma, what do we see? Misafkale, Rav Shimon is Mesupik, because he's saying maybe you have Maima, you have Zika, and still he doesn't know. So the Chayra, we have a good kasha. How can you tell me the reason why Eshev Achash Lehayel that even if Shimon doesn't marry Reuven's widow, when Levi arrives on the scene, he's finding her married to Shimon, who's dead through a Zika. We see with Zika and Maimah is Mesupik. So how can you tell me Zika alone would work? V'chitema midaraisa hachanami midaraisa Zika is kiknusa, and that's why Levi can marry her. And over here, the whole shaila is the Rabbanon, because mine is the Rabbanon. The miyabim chada miftara chada. You'll be able to do yibam one and pata the other. Guys, why could you do yibam to Chana and pata Penina? Because Zika kiknusa, and she's married to Levi. Forget the mimer. Again, one more time. Maybe really you could do Yibam to Chana and Pata Penina or vice versa, because Zika Kiknusa. And what's the reason you're stopping? Umidrabanan hu the Asr, Midrabanan, we're not letting you off the hook with one Yibam. You know why? Gizei Rashema Yomru. Beis Yevamois Habois Mishnei Batim, Chadam Yabma, V'ida Michtrav Leiklum. In other words, there's a potential problem over here. People will think that, one second, they don't want to know this Torah of Zika. They'll see that Shimon never married Chana. Shimon never married Chana. And now what's happening? He's going ahead and he's one is getting Yibum, and the other one is going free. Not knowing that the Zika created that bond. They'll say, let's say Shimon died, let's say Reuven died and Shimon did nothing. And now Shimon died. Guys, in the case, three brothers, Shimon did nothing. And now Shimon dies. Falling in front of Levi are two women that he'd have to do either Yibum or Chalitza to. So again, that's what I'm concerned about. The reason why we're doing Chalitza is because that situation may arise. If we allow you to marry one and pata the other with a mimer, because I forget the mimer, it's the Zika that creates it, then in a situation where you have two separate ones with nothing was done, you may go ahead and say that you can go ahead and one will be free with nothing, which is a problem. Says the word, that can't be the reason. That can't be the reason. Why? For a time of the Rav Shimon's reason is not Zika. Rav Shimon's reason is Maimer. Mishum Maimer v'lav Maimerhu. The Tanya, Amalahem Rav Shimon l'chachamim, in Mamar shel Sheni Maimer. If the Maimer Shimon is a Maimer, Eisha Sheni hu boil. Then he's being boiled. Let's say he lives with guys. He lives with Reuven's widow. He lives with Chana. If Maimer is kind of Kinyan Gomer, she's not Reuven's widow. She's Shimon's widow. In Maimar shel Sheni ain't a Maimar, then Eishes Ruvain who boiled. Then he's being boiled, Ruvain's widow. So Mimanav Shach. So you see, Reb Shimon's concern over here is the koyach of the Maimar, not the possibility of a gezeira, what people might think where 2 Yavam is full from 2 houses. Good? So now you got a problem. Again, now getting just back to everything. How could you tell me that Reb Shimon holds Zika Kiknusa by the case of, guys, listen, we're getting back to our Mishnah, by the case of Ruvain dying, Levi being born, and Shimon not doing even till after the birth of Levi, and you tell me Zika Kiknusa, and you're taking is that's for sure, that Zika Kiknusa. 1 second. Rav Shimon is mesupik when they got a Zika and a Maima. You're going to tell me a Zika alone is not? Says, guys, I'll tell you, I got a teretz. By the case of Eishes Achim Shloyel Mo, there's only one participant. All you have to worry about is Shimon. Over here, you have 2. Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara of Amalei Abaya of Leishani Lecha bein Zikas Yavam Echad. There's no difference to you when we say Zika Kiknusa by 1 Yavam. Again, the case Shimon, there's only one. Ruvain dies. We're going to view what? And there's no other brother. There was only brother in the world. Levi wasn't born yet. So you know what? Before Levi's born, the only game in town is Shimon. You know what I'll say? Zika Kiknusa. I'll say in that scenario, Zika is Kiknusa. It's the only game in town. Guys, but over here, everyone's born. And when Ruvain dies, you got a Zika to who? Shimon and Levi. Right. So is Zikas Yavam Echad, the Zika Shnei Yavamim? Dilma Kiyam Reb Shimon Zika Knusa Damya. When does Shimon say? When does Rabbi Shimon say that Zika is Knusa, and will view Levi's widow as being married to Shimon, and therefore Levi can marry Ruvain's this be Yavam Echad, where there's only 1 Yavam, Shimon, and then Levi's born afterwards. But you have 2 Yavamim, like the case of Gimel Achin. We have 2 Yavamim, Shimon and Levi. Maybe you don't say Zika Knusa. Good. So that's this. So l'chayra, we have a potential teretz. L'chayra, we have what? We have a potential teretz. That would be apparently what a very, very good teretz, right? To give that teretz. That Zika Knusa by 1 and by the other one not. How did that sounds good, right? You have a teretz. Says the Gemara, the Chimish Shanile. Is there a difference, Reb Shimon, according to Reb Shimon, whether the Zika comes from 1 or the Zika comes from 2? Good. Guys, are you with me so far? Got the cheshbon? Again, now, I'm going to prove to you that it can't be what you think. Why? Listen to this. This is Gavaldi. Umishani Reb Shimon is the difference to Reb Shimon between 1 Yavam and 2 to say by 1 Yavam Zika Knusa and by 2 Yavam not. Says the Gemara, Vatanya, Klal Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon gives a rule. What's Reb Shimon's rule? Kol shehaleda kaidemis l'nesuin. When the leda takes place before the nesuin, meaning the birth of Levi takes place before the nesuin of what? Of Shimon. Loy chaytzas loy misyabemis. You don't do chalitza and you don't do yibam. Nesuin koydem l'leya. If the Nesuin comes before Leah, Leleda, if the Nesuin comes before the birth of Levi, okay, that's what Rav Shimon says. Now, my love biyavam echad, v'katani, loichei letzes, v'loi misyabemes. You're giving a rule. What's your rule? Guys, listen to the rule. Listen to the rule. If Levi is born before the Yibam Nesuin, before the Yibam of Shimon, then what? You have to chalitza, right? Then you have to go ahead. What does that mean? She's an erva. She's an erva. Who is saying this rule? Rav Shimon. What does Rav Aishia hold? The Rav Shimon would hold over here. It's still not an erva. Again, we always have to connect back to where we're going. Guys, look at me. We're going to connect back. Watch. Rav Aishia said a huge chiddush. Even in the case where Ruvain died and Shimon and Levi's born, and then and only then did Shimon do Yibam, it's still Levi would be mutter to go ahead and marry Shimon's widow in the case where when Ruvain dies. Levi will be able to marry when Shimon dies. Why? Because Zika Kiknusa. Good? That's what Rav Oshia said. That's the mechanism. Rav Shimon himself now is giving a rule. Listen to Rav Shimon's rule. Anyone that the birth took place before the Nesuin, meaning when Levi, the third brother, is born before the Nesuin, the marriage of Shimon to Reuven's widow, nothing. She's Eishes Achash Leibalamo. That's the kasha. We're just working it in because the chayre, that rule is stated not only by two people, but even by one person. And that's the kasha. Says, let's see it inside. Umi Shani Leila Reb Shimon. The difference between one Yevamot, one Zika, and two. The one Bava, meaning the case of Eishes Achash Balamo. The two, meaning the case of the three brothers. Vatanya, here's the klal. Klal Amar Reb Shimon. Here's the rule of Reb Shimon. Kol Shal Leda. Kaidem Eslin Nesuin. With the Leda, the birth of Levi took place before the Nesuin of Shimon. Loi Chayletzes Lemi Sebemes. Why? Because she's Eishes Achiv Shleihoya Balamo. That's going to be the kasha. Nesuin Kaidem Leda. But if the Nesuin, if Shimon does Yibum before Levi is born, then Oy Chayletzes Lemi Sebemes. Then there's no erva. My lav biyavam echad. Is this rule not speaking with as one yavam, like the case of Eishes Achiv Shleihoya Balamo? The Ketani Loy Chaletz Lo Yisya Bemes says more lie. It's speaking b'shnei Yevama. It's speaking by what? By two Yevamas. Let's look at page 115. Page 115, guys. This is Reb Shimon's rule. Here's Reb Shimon makes this rule. You got three brothers, Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, right? And then Reuven dies, and now Reuven's wife is fully in front of Shimon and Levi, and then a third brother is born, Yehuda, right? A fourth brother, right? Reuven's out of the picture. A fourth brother, Yehuda is born. So, guys, what's Yehuda to Reuven's widow? Now, Shimon goes ahead and marries her, and then Shimon consequently dies, and then what? And then Levi dies, and she falls in front of Yehuda. She will be also in Yehuda. Why? Because Reuven died before Yehuda was born. But it's speaking by two, not by one. It's speaking about she fell twice before she got to Yehuda. She fell to Shimon and Levi. But maybe she only fell to one. And Hinami, if Shimon would hold that what that it'll be mutter. So his klal was stated what? By two. Masha'en came by one. You would hold Zika Kiknusa. And our Mishnah was speaking at one Nefila, only Reuven to Shimon, right? By Reuven to Shimon, you'd say Zika Kiknusa. By Reuven to Shimon, Levi, and Levi Yehuda, we will not say it. So right now, he's held serve. Rabbi Oshia's Pshat has held serve. The questions we'd asked upon him, everything is hunky-dory, at least in right now. Now, says the Gemara, first wide line, so therefore you're telling me, guys, your rule therefore is not ironclad. Guys, your rule is not ironclad. What was this rule? And listen to my words. Anytime the brother is born before the Yibum, then there's no erva. Then there's erva. Then she's out. So that's not true. That's only if it's two, not one. It's two brothers, not one brother. Because you're telling by one brother, we'll say Zika Kiknusa, we'll say that what? That she is married and she's not an erva. Says the Gemara, Ihachi adetani nesuin kaidin leleda. When if the nesuin, the birth took place before the leda, you don't have to bring me a second case. You could have made that same chilik in the first case. In the case where Levi was not born yet, it depends. When do we say she's a full-fledged erva? B'shnei Yevamim. That's when Reuven dies. She falls to Shimon and Levi, and then eventually to Yehuda. Aval b'yavam echad. If she only falls to Shimon and then to Levi, good. So L'chari is asking. In other words, if what you say is true, that Rav Shimon holds Zika Knusa by one, then the rule that you set up is. I got a big question on that rule. The rule said carte blanche. Any time that the Levi is born before Shimon's Nesuin, it's an erva. That's not true. That's only if there's two brothers, but not if there's one brother. So your rule is not a good rule. So it says the Gemara, no. Kula b'shnei Yevamim kamairi. We're speaking all about what? We're speaking about two brothers and not one. One, Zika Kiknusa. And therefore, by the case of Eish Zach Shalai Lamo, she's not an Erva. We're speaking about two. Ve'elamai klala. So you're going to ask a question. One, so what's the klal? The klal is not a good klal because we just proved that why it's not true. Because by one, even if Levi is born before the marriage. Ve'oid, Masav Rabbi Shaya. Now, this is why you had Bigoris guys, Rebbe Oishia, right? Because now Rav Oishaya is asking. That's why now going back. It had to be Rabbi Oishaya, right? Because here you have Rav Oishaya asking. It can't be the same person. Ve'oid, Masav Rabbi Shaya. Gimel Achin, you have, okay, now let's get this case. Let's see the case. Page 116. Okay, here's the case. 116. Shimon, there's three brothers, Shimon, Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Shimon and Reuven are married to two sisters. Good. Shimon married to two sisters. Reuven dies. Now, falling in front of Levi is the only game in town. Is that now he can marry this Kamaisa, no problem. He has no Zika, right? He's not married to any of the Zika. He just has the Zika of the brothers. Good. There's no reason to asa Levi for marrying the Kamaisa. However, Shimon then dies. So falling in front of Levi is Achas Kukasoi. The Kamaisa and the Idach, you have Zika of two women who are sisters. So these are two sisters falling in front of Levi, right? So that's a problem. Says the Tanakama, you do chalitza and you don't do yibum. Why? Because it achas kukaso. Reb Shimon says they're pata completely. Mina chalitza umina yibum. Right? They're pata completely. Why now? You don't need anything. Says Reb Shimon that you're pata completely. Now, according Rabbi Shi is going to ask Reb Shimon, you should give yibum to the first and let the other one off the hook. Okay, let's see the Gemara now. Says the Gemara. No, before we see the Gemara, guys, there's this case. The next case is also the same case where you're creating an erva by Ishu Bita. Shimon Levi, Reuven Shimon Levi, Ishu Bita, and then you're gonna have the same case. Reuven dies. Falling in front of Levi is Shimon's mother-in-law. The Isha Kamaisa, that's Shimon's mother-in-law. Then Shimon dies. Falling in front of Levi is a mother-in-law and a daughter, Ishu Bita. So the same thing. So Tanakama is going to say Chazal Misyadlis, and Shimon says Pat across the board. Now, right now we're learning this is two separate cases. Ketani. What's going to happen is on page 118, the same thing, but now Baspita. But eventually, Rav is going to end up on page 119, where you have a Gansit Shalom. You have three brothers married to Anisha Ubita and Binah. And if you take a look at page 120, Rav is going to say, Reuven, Shimon, Velevi. Reuven and Shimon are married to two sisters. And in addition, Reuven is married to Anisha and Bita. So Reuven has two possible problems eventually for Levi, either a sister problem or an Anisha Bita problem. In other words, this is the combo of those two separate cases, guys. So falling in front of Reuven, Levi will eventually be two people that are problematic because they're sisters, two people problematic because they're mother-daughter. And that's what happens. Reuven dies first, and then what? Then Shimon dies. So falling in front of Levi, let's go over here. Falling in front of Levi will be what? Two sisters, Reuven and Shimon's widows, and Ishu Bita, Reuven and Shimon's widows. So he can go ahead, Levi, be miyabim one. He can, the first one that fell, he can be miyabim, and that will let the other ones off the hook. Let's get to 121. Reb Shimon should need pata with four cases. Again, this will all come together in the Gemara, guys. You'll see. Reuven, Shimon, Velevi. Okay, Reuven's married to somebody. Reuven and Shimon are married to sisters. And they're also married to what? Brother and daughter. It's the exact same case as 120, except you have numbers over here. Concluding in the bottom line, guys, look at the bottom line. falling in front of Levi is a mishmash, right? Falling in front of Levi are two sisters, Ishu Bita, and also on the other side, an Ishu Bita and granddaughters. So eventually you can marry one of them and that will pater the other. Okay? So now let's put this all together in Gemara, it'll make a little sense. Watch. It says the Gemara. So again, let's just introduce. Rav Shimon said a rule. If Levi's born before Shimon does chalitza, out. If Levi is born after Shimon does chalitza, in. And we wanted to say that speaking by two, not one, because by one we'd say Levi's still in, even though Levi was born before Shimon did anything. We're making the chiluk between two brothers and one brother. So the Gemara now goes ahead and gets rid of that because we want to say that rule is only speaking by two. Let's start again. 4 lines down. First of all, first of all, what's your klal? Your klal is not a good klal. Why? Because by 1 and 1, it's not a good klal. If Levi would be born before Shimon does Yibam, you still would not be a problem. So it's not a good klal. Rabbi Shai is going to ask the following case. Gimelachim, Shnai mehem nesu and shtei achayos, oy ishu bita, guys, or ishu bita, mamish, 2 separate cases. Oy isha ubas bita, or isha and granddaughter. So in other words, 3 cases, 3 problems. Either a sister problem, a mother-in-law problem, or a grandmother problem. Oy isha ubas bina, hari elu cholz u'misyadmos. You do chalitza, you don't do yibam. Reb Shimon Paita. Reb Shimon says you don't need anything. Reb Shimon. Zika keknusa damya liyabim lekamaisa. Go ahead and do yibam to the first one, because after all you were married, and then pat to the other one. V'tifteridach. So you should be able to do that. So Rav Amam, my Paita nami Paita b'shniya. It means enachinami. You do yibam to the first one, and whoever was widowed second is free. You do yibam to the first one that fell to you, and whoever was widowed second goes free. Who gets free? That's what he meant. Fred Gemara, Vatanya of Shimon Paita b'shteyem. Rav Shimon says, side the first one, side the second one, not just the second one. He patted also the first one. So it's mashma that it goes free quarterly. So Marava, Shniya shebezugzeh, u'shniya shebezugzeh. Again, the second one of this one and the second one of this one. Page 120, guys. Quick look. Again, falling in front of Levi eventually be 2 sisters and an Ishu Bita, correct? Ishu Bita. So now Levi will say, Levi will do Yibam to the Rishayna of both. And
wedding Thursday night. It's not ideal if you don't hate going. But usually like like it's cheaper Thursday night.
Sorry.
Try to figure out who's guilty. I'm looking at the faces. I got my answer. Okay, anyway, I tell you, Penny, I was a free safety in my previous life. So 1135, guys. Really, Levi can go ahead and he does Yibam. If he does Yibam to the first sister, the other one goes free. If he does Yibam to the first Isha, then the other one goes free. That's what it means. Shniya Sheb. That's what it means. Shniya Sheb Zugzeh. Shniya Sheb Zugzeh. Okay, so back in the Gemara, says the Gemara, Katoi Rava ba'arba zuge. Rava made a mistake by 4 zugim because again, we didn't learn 2 cases. Each one was separately. Chada the oi ketani. It wasn't that he was married to sisters. The brothers were married to sisters, and the brothers were married to Ishu Bita. Either the brothers were married to sisters, or the brother was married to Ishu Bita. V'oid, if you're going to tell me that they're married to the first 2, then they have to marry to the other 2 as well. Reb Shimon Paita ba'arba asami boile, guys. Page 121. You got, again, you have to set up a scenario. Sisters, basbita, basbina, and basbina, basbita. So you need 4 and not 2. And Tanya b'shimon paita b'shteyem menachlisim min ha'yibum. Shnemar v'isha ela v'oy Tanya. Reb Shimon says they both pata v'isha lachayis lesikach litzrar v'shash nasa tzarazu lezu. At the time they had tzaras to each other, lahei lecha lekuchin afilu ba'achas mehen. You can't even marry one of them. But if you're going to hold Zika Kenusa, you should be married one and not the other. Okay? So the Gemara is proven right now, we're holding it a big kasha. If you hold Zika Kenusa, why would both be pater? The first one you should marry. So guys, again, go the minutia of the cases. Let's not get carried away. You may not, I blew the cases by you very quickly because the bottom line is what do you have in front of you? You have in front of you people falling at, you're going to say yes, Zika. And the question is, with Zika Kenusa, the first one should be on the hook and the second one should be off the hook. And we're saying they're both on the hook, you have to do chalitza to both. So obviously it doesn't hold Zika Kenusa. And his klal is not an iron care klal. So therefore, we're trying to extricate Rabbi Oishia from this, and we're going to be quasi-successful. Elam Rav Ashi, if the two sisters fell one after the other, hachanami, Zika Kiknusa, you'd marry the first sister, and the second one would be off the hook. Hachamayaskinon did nafel bevasachas, they fell simultaneously. Since they fell simultaneously, then you can't do that. Now, how's it possible to hold that you fall simultaneously? Rav Shimon Savak, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, also Rabbi Yossi Aglili, the almost of the opinion, Efshel Tzamtzim. It's possible to go ahead and be Mitzamtzim. Okay, so let's just go over and see where we're holding right now. And then we'll continue. We got into the sugya because of one case, the case of Eishes Achar Shlo Lamo. Which case? The case when Reuven dies, Levi's born, and then Shimon does Yibam. Why in the world would this not be a case of Eishes Achar Shlo Lamo? The answer would be because as soon as Reuven died, we're going to view Reuven's widow married to Shimon. So when Shimon was born, when Levi was born, he found two Yevamos together. That's the lumdis. Good. We question that lumdis. Where do we find it? One case, two case, three. We question it. B'shas adchak, we're saying Rabbi Shia, mamish b'shas adchak. We're saying in a case where they fell b'vas achas, in such a case, maybe Rabbi Shimon's klal would work. But by one zika, clearly it works. In the other cases, maybe it'll work. Okay, that's what we're holding. Now we're going to get to Rav Papa's shita, and Rav Papa is of the opinion that Rav Shimon agrees. Much easier. He agrees where Reuven dies, Levi is born, that Levi cannot marry Reuven's widow, even if the Shimon does Yibam. Can't be. Ella, so Papa Amar, b'yavim v'akach noilid, polygraph Shimon. When if he did Yibam, if Shimon does Yibam, v'akach noilid, and then Levi is born, then pligi Rav Shimon disagrees. That's when he disagrees, because since he found the Betera. However, b'noilid v'akach Yibam, when Levi is born before Shimon's Yibum, then Loi Plol, he agrees with the Chachamim, that will be Eishes Achar Shlo Lamo, and you don't have to come on Zika Keknusa, zero. You don't have to come on to that at all. V'travayo l'Rabbanan, it's the Rich. What's our question? Rabbi Oishia approved it, but if you say case number 2, why do you have to say case number 1? Loizu Avsu. Not only in a case, guys, listen to this. Not only in a case where Levi is born before the Yibum is it Asar, but even in a case when Levi is born after the Yibum, it's Asar. And therefore, Reb Shimon is nothing, the repetition of the Mishnah has nothing to do with Reb Shimon. The repetition of the Mishnah, which is what Rabbi Shia got into. Rabbi Shia said that they're both going to Reb Shimon. Since they're both going to Reb Shimon and he disagrees, if he disagrees across the board. Says our Papa, no. They're all according to the Rabbanon. Why do you mention both? Loizu Avsu. Not only in a case where what? Where Levi is born before Shimon does Yibam, it's an Asa. I'll tell you a bigger chiddush. Even when Levi is born after Shimon does Yibam, it's still Reuven's widow, it's Asa, Eishes Achar Shlo Lamo. And we'll see why in a second. So now, Rav Papa has a different machlokes. He argues Rabbi Shia that the argument of Shimon is only in the case of first born and then Yibam. Tanya Kabasi de Rav Papa. We have a brisa that substantiates. That's why a brisa, a Tana substantiating Rav Papa. V'tiyufta de Rabbi Shia and an upshlag on Rabbi Shia. Shnei achim ba'olam echad. You got two brothers in the world. Umeisech mehem b'lei Vlad. One of them dies. Okay, not a problem. Reuven and Shimon in the world. Reuven dies without a child. V'amar hasheni hazeh, steps up Shimon to the plate. Laseis maimer b'yevimtoi, to do maimer. He wants to do maimer to who? To Reuven's widow. V'lehispik lasas b'maimer. The Gemara is going to ask, what do you mean, Omad v'lehispik? What went on over here? V'lehispik lasas b'maimer. He did not get a chance to do maimer. Ad shenoilad le'ach till what? Till Levi was born. Umeis, and then Reuven dies. Shimon dies. Harishayna, the first Yavam, meaning Reuven's widow, Yoitzis Mishum Eis Zach Shalahayel Balamo, Ushniya Oichaletz Misya Bemes. And the second one, you do Chalitza Misya Bemes, no problem. They were not related whatsoever. Shimon's wife is totally free. Reuven's wife is totally not free. And since Shimon never married her, because Maimah doesn't shop a Zika, therefore she's a full-fledged available. Shimon's wife is full-fledged Yevamot available. The Maimah didn't shop any Zika to make her Tzoras Erva that you have to do Chalitza to. Again, if Maimah does something, that would go ahead, because he didn't do Maimah. He wanted to, but he didn't. He wanted to, but he didn't. Okay. Now, what about if he did do Maimah? Case number 2. Guys, look at me again. I know you're getting tired. Let's go through this again. This is important. We're going to prove now Rav Papa's pshat that Rav Shimon agrees, and disagrees. He only argues in the case where Levi's born after Shimon had married Reuven's widow. But in the case where he didn't, he agrees. The first case of the Brisa was regular case of Yibum. Instead, a guy wants to do Maimer and he doesn't do Maimer, so therefore he did nothing. Now comes along, the second brother dies, falling in front of the third brother are 2 available women, right? 2 available women. We have Reuven's Rebbetzin and Shimon's Rebbetzin. So what happens over here? The first one goes out as Eishazak Shalayel Abamo, Vishniya Oichales Misya Bemes. The second one you do Chalitza to, or you do again. The first one you can't marry. Because why? Because it's Reuven's widow and you weren't in the world at the same time. Shimon's widow, you can marry her. Very good. Now, Asaba Maimer, guys. Shimon does Maimer. Maimer is going to impact, what would the impact be? Maybe now the second wife of Shimon, there's a Zika to an Erva. Again, let's say Shimon had married Reuven's wife. Then Levi would not be able to, then totally off the hook. Levi does nothing because you have an Erva and it's service Erva. That's the first Mishnah. But Shimon did not do Yibum. Shimon only did Maimer. Again, case number 1, he thought about Maimer. Case number 2, he did Maimer. After the Maimer, Levi's born. Or Levi's born and then you did Maimer. Umeis. And the second one, you go ahead. You can't do, because of the Maimer, you do Chalitza. So in other words, Maim is not strong enough to go ahead and create it Saras Erva to let her off the hook. So you do Chalitza. One more time. Reuven died. Shimon did Maimer. Levi comes along the scene. The first one is Eishes Achar Shalayel Bamo. But you did Maimer over here. Since you did Maimer over here, it's not a full-fledged Erva to make her a Saras Erva, but it is enough to that you can't do Yibum to her. Therefore, the second wife of Shimon, Penina, you do Chalitza to. That's case number 2. Reb Shimon Oimar in case number 2, guys, Reb Shimon says in case number 2, Amid Beis, Bi Asa oy Chalitzasa shel Achas Mehen Peiteres. Now, let's see. So what did he just say? Guys, what's the case? You have falling in front of Levi, Eishes Achar Shalayel Bamo, and a Maimer, with Maimer, and a full, clean woman. You know, Shimon's wife that he was in the world with at the same time. Okay. Now, says Rav Shimon, in that case, what do you do? Poiteris Sairasa, the Bia, a Chalitza of one, Patis the other. Says, now, what does that mean? Chalitz Labalis Maimer, if you did Chalitza to Reuven's widow. Levi does Chalitza to Reuven's widow, Leinifdrat Sarah, right? You don't go ahead, right? That does not the tzara off the hook. Why? Let's say Maim is not koina. Guys, guys, Shimon has 2 wives now. Reuven's one that he did Maimer to, and a full-fledged wife, Penina. In order to get Penina off the hook, we need him totally married to Reuven, to Reuven's widow. Then should be Tsaras Erva, Techana. So now, Rav Shimon says, either the bia or chalitza of one pat is the other. Now, what is it talking about? If he gives chalitza to Reuven's widow, the one he did Maimer to, the tzara doesn't go free, right? Why? Because Maimer is not enough to go ahead and make her a tzaras erva. Konsa, if he goes ahead, if Shimon would marry her, the umes, this is a third case. Konsa, Shimon marries her, umes, and then Shimon dies. The akach noilad loy ach, and then he's born. After he's born, oishen noilad loy ach, or he's born. The akach konsa, right, and then he goes ahead and marries her, umes, and dies. Shteim pturos min achalitza min hayibum. Now that clearly is the case of noilad the achakach yavam. Guys, for case number one, Konsa. Shimon marries what? Shimon marries Reuven's widow, totally. Umes, and now Shimon dies. Now Levi is born. So any one of Shimon's wives are Eishes Lamo. Reuven's wife and Shimon's wife, because Levi wasn't in the world at the time. Good? Next. Or Levi's taka born. Konsa, and then Shimon marries Reuven's widow. Umes, Shteim Peturas min achalitza min hayibum. They're either both Esav Achash Lamo, or one is Esav Achash Lamo, one is Tzaras Erva. If Shimon, guys, is born, if Shimon is born after, if Levi is born after Shiva den Yibum, then both, he wasn't in the world by Reuven and he wasn't in the world by Shimon. Forget about it. And even if they're both Shimon's wives, forget about it, right? If he's born before Shimon does Yibum, then Shimon's wife, then what? It's Eisha Shalom, Kashal case. And if the case, Reuven's wife, right? And Shimon, now, just one more time. Konsa v'noyle le'ach, v'ach kach meis shteyem, v'noyle le'ach, he marries her, and then what? And then Levi is born. V'ach kach meis, and then Shimon dies. Shteim petuas min hayibum, div Reb Meir. These are words of Reb Meir. Reb Shimon Omer, hoyelu bo umatzah beheter, even though he's born after the Yibum, since he found beheter, v'lei amda olav sha'achas be'isa mi'isa, miyab le'isem sheyirtza, he could do either once or chelas le'isem sheyirtza. So in the case, guys, of Konsa, where Shimon married, and now Levi's born, says Reb Shimon, in that case, then Esav Achash Lamo does not apply. That's the case of Yovim. Shimon did Yibum, V'yachkach Noila. Now, Hababa the Sefer Laman Ketanila. This last case, who learned this? Who learned this last case? Guys, the last case that we just said, the case of that you were born, and then what? First did Yibum, then you were born. Elaim Reb Meir Ketanila. 1 second. How could Reb Meir possibly learn this case? Guys, we have two cases over here where the birth took place before the Yibum or the birth took place after the Yibum. Leit Reb Meir, and the Gemara listed them as two separate cases. Leit Reb Meir listed them as one case because Reb Meir holds in both cases. He doesn't make the chilik whether Shimon married or not. So why didn't you go ahead and list them together? It must be, that's going to Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon, it must be Rav Shimon. Both cases, guys. So we have two cases, watch. A case where the later took place first, and it says when the later took place first, it's Asr. Then we have a case where the Yibum took place first, and then it's Mutter. And we're proving who said it. Rav Shimon said it. So you see Rav Shimon agrees in the case where it was born first, that you're out. That's the raya to Rav Papa. It's a long-winded raya, but that's the raya. So now, so it says Elo Lav Rav Shimon, Ubiyabim v'akach noilad polik. But where did he argue? First, only where you did Yibum, the latter case, and then noilad, case number 2. But noilad v'akach Yibum, but the case where you were born first, where Levi was born before the Yibum, v'akach Yibum Shimon, le polik. Shmami, no, guys, you have a clear-cut raya that what? That Rav Shimon, like Rav Papa, that Rav Shimon agrees where Levi was born. Shimon agrees where Levi was born, and then the Yibum took place. There's an Isser of Eishes Achiv Shalei Omad Ba'olamo. So let's chazer ibn what we have to this point in time. We began the daf quoting a second Mishnah, which is telling us the case of Eishes Achiv Shalei Hayel Ba'olamo. We had two Mishnayos telling us apparently the same case. The first Mishnah told us the case where Levi was born first, and then Shimon did Yibum. Our second case Mishnah told us Shimon did Yibum and Levi was born first. Rabbi Oshaya wanted to suggest Rav Shimon argues in both cases of Eishes Achiv Shalei Hayel Ba'olamo that in both cases he would disagree and say that Levi would be able to be miyabein Shimon's widow. Why? Because it's considered Ba'olamo. Since the time he came in the world, she was there. Either physically she was married, or using the mechanism of Zika Kiknusa, the Zika of Reuben's widow to Shimon made her a full-fledged wife to go ahead and say that he was in the world when Shimon was born. We have a lot of questions on that. That was the difficult part of the daf, as I told you, exactly how we held the lumdis. Again, in the end of the day, it's confusing, the lumdis, but if you don't walk around with the cases, you got it, that we held serve that he held Zika B'Knusa by one and not by the other. Any question you had is by two Yevamas, but by one Yevama, then he held the Zika Kiknusa, and Amish is speaking about one Yevam, and therefore it would work. That was the bottom line. Rav Papa disagreed. Rav Papa said the first Mishnah in our parak is going according to everybody, and that's why Rav Shimon did not argue. Rav Shimon is masking if a person is born before the brother does Yibum, out. Question is, so why list the second case? Madach, you're out by the first case. No, the second case is, I'll tell you a bigger chiddush. Leizu, not only when he's born and the Yibum wasn't done, but afilu where Yibum was done and is born, it's still out. And that's where we're holding right now. We brought it in the Brisa. Now we'll just go over, explain in the case of the Brisa a little more literally. The whole purpose of the Brisa was to prove like Rav Papa, because Rav Papa is of the opinion that as we just stated, that they agree where the later took place before the Yibum, that in fact it's the Eishes Achiv Shalei Hayel Ba'olamo. Amamar always means we're going back over Brisa. Amamar. Amar Hasheni lasas maimer b'yevimtai. You said a funny lashon. The Sheni stood up to do maimer in the Yevama. V'lei hispik lasas maimer. He didn't get a chance to do maimer b'yevimtai at shenoydod loyach umeis. That was the case. He wanted to do maimer. He didn't get a chance to do maimer, and then he died. And then the brother's born. So Reuven's wife that he did not get a chance to do maimer to goes free as Eishes Achiv Shalei Hayel and Vishnia, and the second one, Shimon's wife, because he was in the world at the same time when Shimon died. My Amad or my loy hispik. What does that mean? What does that mean? He stood up and didn't have time. Guys, he either did or he didn't. What does it mean? Two steps. He stood up to do it, and he didn't get a chance to do it. Bottom line is, we want to know one thing. At the time, did he do it? He didn't do it. Did he do Maimon and he created a problem? What didn't do Maimon didn't create any problem. That's what we want to know. Ella Amad means midaita. She decided she wants to marry him, and she accepted it. Speak midaita ella balkarcha, and she didn't accept the kedushin. Initially, she said, "I'll take it, I'll marry you," and then she said, "No." Udaloi Rebbe. And it's not like Rabbi. In other words, you can't force her to marry him. Titanya, Samru does maimer to his Yevama. Samru does maimer to his Yevama. Shalom daita against the will. Rabbi Yomi Kaina. Rabbi says, just like Yevama Yava is against the will, so too maimer can be against the will. He compares kedushin to Yibum. The Chacham say no, because just like Kedushin is Midaita, so too Maimer, which is Kesef Kedushin of a is also Midaita. My time at the Rebbe that says it's not accept that you could force the issue. Gomar mi bia di Yevama. He learns out from the bia of Yevama. Ma bia di Yevama bal karcha, just like the bia of a Yevama is against the will. Af Kedushin di Yevama bal karcha. So too the Kedushin is against the will, and therefore you can go ahead and force the issue. Rabbanon, Gami Mikadushin, Dalma. They don't compare Maimer to Yevama. They compare it to regular Kedushin. Ma Kedushin the Alma, just like regular Kedushin the Alma, Midaita, so too what is with her knowledge. Av Kedushin the Yevama, Midaita. The my Kamifgi, what's the Svaras Hamachlokas between the two? Masava mili the Yevama have leila. One holds you learn mili the Yevama. Rebbe holds you learn mili the Yevama. Maimer, which is a kesef conclusion of a Yevama. You learn from the act of be of Yevama. Umasava, and the Chacham say no. Mili the kedushin have leila melef. Good. Now, asaba maimer v'akach noy. So let's say in the second case. The first case was you wanted to do maimer. The second case when you actually did do maimer. So asaba maimer v'akach noy, and then Levi's born. Oisha noy or Levi's born v'akach asaba maimer. Now umeis, and now Shimon dies. So falling in front of Levi, guys, is Shimon's widow and Reuven's widow. Reuven's widow, who was not a full-fledged wife of Levi, of Shimon, because it was only Maimer, and Penina, who Chana was that one, and Penina, the full-fledged wife of Shimon. So Yaitza Mishum Eishes Ach Shleihar Ba'amo, right? The first one goes out because Mamish, you hold its Eishes not in the world at the same time. Ushniya Chales Leishabemes, because the Maimer took off. Epis the Maimer took off that you can't give a yibum because maybe it's like a little of a zika. Now, Reb Shimon disagrees. Reb Shimon would be asa echalitzas shalachas mehen paiteres sayrasa. We said memanav shach. Reb Shimon ahekai. Where's Reb Shimon going on? Elaim in the case anoidud le'ach, in the case where the brother's born v'akach asaba maimer ha'amrit. The first case benoidud b'seif yibum le'palag Reb Shimon. Now, as Reb Shimon is maida, where Levi is born first, that what you can't do anything. It's Eishes Ashlayil Mo. Yet he's saying over here you could do something. So it must be Elo Asaba Maimer. He must be on the case where you did Maimer. V'akach noilad le'ach, and after the ach is born. Chalitz lebailas Maimer loy niftarat Sarah. So if you do chalitza to Chana, it doesn't pater it Sarah. My timer. You shouldn't have it Sarah vadai. Shivadai Pnina's vadai. It's right. Ubailas Maimer suffix. Now the question is it's a suffix whether it's the wife of Shimon or not, but Pnina Vadai is the wife of Shimon. Vein Safik might seem they Vadai. So the chalitza of Chana cannot pata the Vadai zika of Pnina. Pnina Vadai is falling to him. The other one we don't know. So Maimer yes, Maimer not. So whether it's falling from Reuven or Shimon or both. So therefore, it says Reb Shimon, if you give chalitza to the Balas Maimer, it doesn't help. You still have to do something to Pnina. So Yosef Amenashav as vid kamei the Rav Huna, Yosef Kama. My time in the Reb Shimon. What's the reason Reb Shimon holds that what? That if you find in married to Shimon that it's not Eishes Ach Shlei B'Lo. Fred Gemara, my time to Reb Shimon, Kedama time, he said the reason. Hoylubo Matzah Beheta. V'lei Omda Alav Sha'achas Biz Iser. Reuven died. Shimon was Miyabim. Levi's born. When Levi's born, he never found the word. So therefore, why are you asking my time with Reb Shimon? Reb Shimon is a good svara. You know what they're asking? My time with the Rabbanon who said it's Eishes Ach Shlei B'Lo. No, by the time you finish the Gemara, you agree with Reb Shimon and disagree with the Chachamim, right? Guys, the Chacham are saying no matter when Levi's born, even after Reuven's widow is a full-fledged wife of Shimon, she's usher. My timer, what's the reason? What's the reason? It's a Gezeres HaKasav. My timer, Amakra, says the Torah, V'locha loy leisha, and he should take her to him as a wife, v'yibma. Now, once he takes her as a wife, what do you mean v'yibma? Adayin yevumim arishonim aleha, that even so, even if he takes her as a wife, still there's an aspect of yibum on her. How do you view her? As soon as he marries her, is it pata completed the Isra Eishes Ach? Then she becomes Eishes Ish, and everything is hunky-dory, and there's no Yevamot situation whatsoever? Well, no. You view her, there's a heta here of Eishes Ach, to marry Eishes Ach. She still remains usher on that Isra of Yivma of Reuven is still there. Memela, when Shimon dies, that Isra of Reuven is still there vis-a-vis Levi as the halacha of Eishes Achiv Shleihoya Balamo. That never left. You can view it two ways. Once Shimon marries Chana, forget Reuven, he's out of the picture. This is a full-fledged wife of Shimon, and when he dies, she falls to Levi. That's the way Rav Shimon viewed it. That's not the way the Chachamim viewed it, because there's one aspect of the pasuk. It says v'yibma. She'll still be a Yevama. What's the Yevamot? The Yevamot is machmas the kedushin of Ruvain, and machmas the kedushin of Ruvain to Levi. It's Eishes Achiv Shloihel B'Lamo. Says Gemara. On my time, the Baran Amakra v'loch Eloi leisha v'yibma adayin yevum rishonim alecha. The yibum of the first one was still upon her. The yibum of Ruvain is still upon her. Okay, guys, you want to make it to the Mishnah? Are you very tired? You're very tired? We'll make it to the Mishnah. Let's make it to the Mishnah. Hands. Let's show of hands. Tired. Okay, we're going to the Mishnah. Says the Gemara. Elahadit nan. We learned in the Mishnah. Kansa. Once he marries her, harihi ki ish le'lechol davar. Meaning, once Shimon marries Ruvain, it's an ish le'lechol davar. V'amar Yosi bar Chanina malamed amid aleph shemigarsha beget. Umachzira. Guys, how could he take her back? L'chayra, once he divorces her, she's still Eishes Ach to him. Another problem. Once she's a Yevama, it should be a get alone should not be enough. You should need Chalitza. You should need a get to take off the Kedushin part. You should need Chalitza to take off the Yibma part. Hasanami lema v'Yibma, Adayin Yevum Rishon V'Lev V'Tibai Chalitza. Again, Rashi has the girsa to Chalitza. Other people have the girsa that what? How could he take her back? Geshmak. Anyway, I think it's Geshmak. My time, the Chachamim, again, says the Chachamim. The reason why, if Shimon dies, she's still also the Levi, is because there is still the Ruvain part. Fred the Gemara, if there's the Ruvain part, if he divorces her, he should need Chalitza for the Ruvain part, and he shouldn't be able to take her back because of the Ruvain part. So Shani Hasan Damakav v'loch the Isha. Kivat Shalacha vis-a-vis Shimon. Nasis ki ishle l'chol davar. She becomes a full-fledged wife, and vis-a-vis Shimon, she's not a Yevama. Says Hachi Hachanami. Says the Gemara. So therefore, the Chayra Hakasrachman v'Yibma. So therefore, Hachanami should be able to marry what? Levi. Says the Gemara v'Yibma. In fact, the Umarayis, why do you see to go ahead and imply it to Levi rather than to Shimon? Mistaba Shadi Hetera Atera. We're going to put the heter of what? Of Velachaloi Leisha, Ahater Deishas Ach, Vishadi Isura Isura. I'm going to put the Isur of the Yibma on Eishas Ach Shalai Balamo. Guys, we have a choice over here. We have the Yibma, which is an Isur, right? I can put it on what? On the heter of Eishas Ach, that was Mutter, or I can put it on Eishas Ach Shalai Balamo. So it's the word, it makes more sense. Once I permitted this woman as Achas Isha, Eishas Ach, to become his full-fledged wife, the Isha, therefore the Yibma should go on the one that is not permitted, which was what? Which was Ruvain's Rebbetzin, that was the Ruvain's Zifta. So we'll put it on. So therefore, like the Chachamim, despite the fact that Shimon married Chana, and Chana was Ruvain's Rebbetzin, vis-a-vis Shimon, there's Yibma, she's vis-a-vis Shimon's Velach. Guys, vis-a-vis Shimon's Velach Isha. Vis-a-vis Levi is what? Is V'Yibma. Says the Gemara, now, Loit Rav Shimon, it's very interesting. Rav Shimon says the following case. He says, you know what? As long as she's married to Levi and she falls, she's good. So the Gemara has a very funny kasha now. The Gemara wants to know the following. Let's get our books out. We have one more case to look at tonight. Page 125. You have Yaakov and Leah. And Yaakov has two wives. He has a wife Leah, and he has a wife Rus. Good. Reuven and Chana are not connected whatsoever. Zero. There's no relationship between Reuven and Chana whatsoever, right? Now, therefore, Reuven marries Chana. No problem. Now, Yosef is born. Yosef and Reuven, they have the same father. Yaakov is the father of Yosef. Yaakov is the father of Reuven. So there's a potential situation between Yosef and Reuven. And now, Reuven dies. So this was a case of Achoise Me'imoi. Yosef, Chana and Yosef have the same mother. Chana and Yosef were both, Rus was the mother of Chana, Rus was the mother of Yosef. So what are you going to tell me? That when Yosef found Reuven, Chana was married to, just like you're telling me that in Shlav 117.3, Yosef finds Reuven and Chana married together, right? The same thing as Eishes Ach Shlei Lamo. Just like Eishes Ach Shlei Lamo was Reuven was married, Reuven's widow was married to Shimon, so too Chana was married to Reuven when Yosef was in the world. So you're going to say, just because you find it beheta, you'll be able to marry? It's a very funny type of kasha, guys. In other words, we know Achosem Imo is an erva. We know Eishes Ach Shlei Lamo is an erva, like Rav Shimon. We know Rav Shimon, once you find the erva in the case of heter, married, so why don't we say the same thing over here? Since Yosef finds Reuven and Chana married together, when Reuven dies, let him be mutter to Chana, which of course you know is not a possibility. Let's see the Gemara inside. El Me'ata, Achosam Imo, Yosef and Chana, they have their maternal brother and sister. Shenisas Achiv Me'aviv, that married his paternal brother. V'achach Noilet Ach, and then he's born afterwards. Umes, and then the brother dies. Tisyabeim. Since Yosef is born and Reuven and Chana together, you're going to tell me he'd be able to yibam haylubo matzah beheter, right? Issa achaysa leichin asal. Says the Gemara, Frag the Gemara Kasha, what are you talking about? Where does the Issa of maternal sister go? Frag the Gemara, Hachanami Issa achiv shlei haya balamo heichin asal. Later of Shimon, where once you tell me Eishes achiv shlei balamo is an erva, you're masking, and once you're telling me that Achosam is a masking. Why? Just because you find the beheta when Shimon married, and then Levi was born. So when in this case where Reuven married and Yosef is born, just like the case of Achosam doesn't go away, why does the case of Achosam Eishes Ach Shlei Lamo, why does that go away? Because it's kash like this. In other words, if it's an erva, it's an erva. What's the heter of an erva finding the heter? What's the heter of finding an erva? You know, here's what you're telling me. In the case, Yosef, Reuven and Chana are married. Yosef and Reuven are brothers. Yosef is born. He finds Reuven married to Chana. Yet we know that when Reuven dies, there's no way in the heck that he's going to be able to marry Chana. Same thing over here. Just because Levi is born after Shimon did Yibum, if it's an erva, why in the world, when Shimon dies, do we say Reuven's widow is permitted to him? What happened to that Issa? That's what the Gemara wants to know. For the Gemara, Issa Chaisa Leichin Asol, Hachnami Issa Achav Shleyan Leichin Asol. Says Hai Sur the less Heta. That's an Issa that doesn't have a Heta. A Chaisa never has a Heta. There's never a Heta over there. It's Asa forever. But Hai Sur the Isla Heta. Lashenkin Eshav Akshlei Lamo does have a Heta. Let's see the last Rashi. Issa Chaisa not less Heta. Avol Issa Eshes Ach Isla Heta. Kishain Leibanim. Issa of Eshes Ach, where there's no children, has a Heta. Hilkach Kishemes Ruvain Belei Banim. Paka Isur Lagabe Sheni. Benissa Shlishi Mikoyach Sheni Ba. Beautiful, guys. You want to know where the Issa went? I'll tell you. The Issa went when Reuven married Shimon. When Shimon married Reuven's widow. There was an Issa to Levi. However, as soon as Shimon married her, that Issa of Eshes Ach went off. No matter how many times you get married, she's still a chaysa. So Yotzim Midvarenu, let's, after a very long share and a hard share. We did Mishnah and Mishnah. Again, Machloikis, take this away to the bank. Eshes Ach like the Chachamim, it doesn't make a difference what the scenario is. Whether born and then married, or married and then born. Either way, like the Chachamim, you're out. We understand clearly born before. Why, if married, out? Because it says b'yivma you many a yavam. Like Rav Shimon, if like Rav Shimon, only the case of yavam, of noilad, firstborn, and then that's out. I agree with that. According to Rav Papa, Vaishya disagrees. Rav Papa, we're going with Rav Papa. The case that you're in is because you're on a beheta. I am a beheta. You're going to tell me anytime it ever is on a beheta, it's just because you're married. And the answer is there's a difference. This of Eishes Ach Shlei Lamo was taken off because of Eishes Ach. Mashenkin Achayse has nothing to do with Achayse. Remains Achayse. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging in there. Very hard to ask.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Very good.
Tried.
Rabbi,
Don't get caught in the minutia. The minutia was just the question. The minutia was just the question to prove achas kukasoy, and we weren't successful. Not achas kukasoy, sika kiknusa. Okay.